Hello and welcome to another Macros for Editors video. Title today is What is a Macro? And my aim here is that people think that macros are a good thing, but they are just a bit scary. So the word's getting round that these macros are useful, but should you take the plunge? So what I want to do in this video is to try to inspire you that it is a good idea to use macros, and secondly to try and give you a bit of reassurance that they're not quite as difficult as you might think. So what do I think that macros can do for you if you're willing to take the plunge? Well, I think that they will provide you with a increased speed of editing, and so for a fixed fee job that means you're going to get higher hourly rates. You'll find more mistakes because the computer will find a lot of them for you, so you get better consistency, and so your clients are somewhat happier with the result. Because you do the job more quickly, you'll get it back to the client more quickly, and so I would suggest that you get better client retention. In other words, they'll come back for more because you've done a good job and you've done it quickly. But less obvious advantage of macros is that they do the boring bits. So actually I find that work is much more satisfying when I can spend the time concentrating on the meaning and flow of the sentences rather than the boring bits, which is having to change odd spellings and hyphenations and those sorts of things. Okay, so our question today is what is a macro? And before I answer that question, I'm going to ask another question, and that is, what is an app? I guess that most of you will know what an app is. I've given a definition here. It's a computer program that you would use on a phone. And I have to confess that the only app I've got on my phone is WhatsApp, and even that I don't use very much. So I'm not into apps, but I know that a lot of people are. But basically they're just computer programs. Well, what do they do? Well, what do you want to do? I'm sure there are apps for all sorts of things on your phones. So there's lots and lots of things that you could do with apps, and the same is true of macros. You ask the question, what is a macro? And I'll say that it's a computer program for use on Microsoft Word. And what do macros do? Well, what do you want it to do? So, the answer is lots of different things. So you would say, give us an example. Okay. Okay, right. Those two characters are the wrong way round, so I can run a macro, and what I will do is to press a keystroke to run a macro which does that, and I've made it bleep at me at the same time so that you can actually hear that it's running a macro. So if I run that macro again, it turns it back round again. So we've got an example there, so we can change those two characters around. So it's just a very simple macro. It does one job only, which inverts two characters, and you can do the same sort of thing with words. You can run a different macro which swaps two words round, so those two words are reversed in order. So as it says there, I'm going to give you some more examples in a minute, but I want to go back and say, well, how do you actually do that? I mean, it's all very well running a macro, but you want to be able to do that yourselves. So I want to give you some reassurance by asking the question, can you program an app? I imagine that for most of you the answer would be no. I certainly couldn't program an app. I have no idea how to do it. Can you use an app? Well, yes. I mean, you just load it in and use it, don't you? You install the app and you use it. You follow the instructions. Well, not being too simplistic, that's what you do with macros. How do you use a macro? The same as for an app. You just install it and use it following the instructions. And that's the sort of level at which hopefully we should be able to work if we want to gain advantage from macros. So to repeat the reassurance, you do not need to program a macro, And if you've heard about recording macros, you don't need to record a macro either. It really is much simpler than you might think. So let's have a look at some more examples. I would tend to feel that there are three general areas in which you can use macros. Let's open some of it. So what I've just done there was using a macro called swap characters, and I also used another one called swap words, and that's for what I would call line editing. So in other words, you're reading the text, and while you are reading it you want to make changes, and it's just that if you use macros, which you would tend to operate from keystrokes because that's quicker, then you can do the changes more quickly, but more than that, you can avoid taking your attention away from the meaning and flow of the sentence when you're making the change, because the macro makes the change for you. And for those macros where you're actually changing the words, then because it's done by a macro, you don't get the problem that you're typing in a new word and you accidentally misspell the word as you're typing it in, because it's done by the macro. So then the second area is where you have a manuscript and you're going to analyze it, or at least the various macros are going to analyze it. So you're thinking of the job, you're not actually making changes to it at this point. All you're doing is getting the macro, or macros, different ones, to look at the text, find out what's there, look for inconsistencies, and report back what it has found. So the example I'm going to use is hyphenalize. So any of these analysis macros tend to be of the form hyphenalize, proper nounalize, docalize. That's the sort of name I've used. So let's bring in a document, and I want to analyze this document. I want to find out about the hyphenation, so I run hyphenalize, and rather than using a keystroke, I'll actually call up the macros window and show you that you can type in the name HYPH, and there's hyphenalize, and I can run that macro from just by clicking there. It's checking that I've got the right macro, and I really did want to run the hyphenalize, and I say yes. So it's looking through the text, and down the bottom here you might be able to see it says words collected. It's telling me how many words it's found that are hyphenalized, that are hyphenated, and then it is now counting to see how many times each of those words occurs, either as a single word or as two words or as hyphenated. So it tells me it's found 126 there. So if you take an example there of cowbell, so it's telling me that in the text I've got the word cowbell as one word twice, and as two words twice, and as hyphenated twice. Case insensitive, twice it's hyphenated and once two words. So these other ones here are greyed out because they only ever occur as hyphenated, so it's not terribly significant. Anyway, you can find out more about how hyphenalize works by going to the instructions in my book about it, or finding the video about hyphenalize, in which I will go into more details on that. So that's demonstrated that one. Put that away. Right, now the third and really powerful set of macros are those that actually make changes to the whole text, because when you're doing that, you're correcting spellings by using a global change, correcting hyphenation, or making the hyphenation as you want it. Lots of things you can change globally, but although it's very powerful, it's also very dangerous, and I will just illustrate that. So what I want to do is just to demonstrate one macro. Admittedly, this is the most important single macro that I've ever produced. fredit, or fredit as we normally say it. because my nickname's Fred actually, but it stands for Find and Replace Edit. So it's going to do a series of find and replaces through the whole of a document. So let's get a document. So we've got this document here, and let's say that we want to change this from UK spelling into US spelling. So in that first line there, you've got a couple of words that you would want to change throughout the document. So let's create a list of all the words we want to change. So let's have a new document, and we want to change COLOUR into COLOR. So let's make that a bit bigger so you can see it more clearly, because that was there. We want to change CENTRE into CENTER. Anything else that we can see there? Well, how about grey? GREY. Change that into GRAY. I mean, you can put in there as many words as you like that have got to be changed throughout the document. So what we do is to run Fredit, and again I'll run it from the list of macros, although I can run it from a keystroke. So I'm looking for FREdit, there it is. So I run Fredit, one click, and it's made those changes. So there's a colour there, there's grey has been changed, and it will have been changed right the way through the whole document. But let's just reload that and do the whole thing again. So demo text, hopefully that's the right one. Yep, a bit bigger. To help us to see what's happening, you can actually put if you put a colour, a highlight on any of these find and replaces, and you can use different coloured highlighting, or if you put on a colour, a text colour, then when it does those find and replaces, then you'll be able to see it more clearly because it will be coloured in the text you're changing. I'll just run it from a keystroke, it's quicker. Okay, so it's made the changes, and it's also coloured and or put a highlight on. Okay, let's just to we can actually undo them. I can cheat. 1, 2. I've done three find and replaces, so I can undo all three of them like that. We just to illustrate the danger of this really powerful idea, I can decide that we've got etc. here. I like to have it with a full stop, so I'm going to do etc into etc dot. Okay, you can perhaps already be ahead of me and see what we're doing. I want to just colour it. You can see the danger that might be coming. So let's try running that. If I run Fredit, it makes all 4 changes, so that one's alright, that's not a problem. Let's just make this a bit bigger. Okay, here you can see the first problem. You've got etc dot dot. You told it to add a full stop to every etc, and so if it's already got a full stop, you end up with 2. But it's even worse than that, because if you look a little further down here, can you see what it's done? All you said was change etc into etc dot, and it's done what you told it to. Be careful what you wish for. So just a warning, because any very powerful macro can be misused, and therefore we have instructions to try to help you. And what we have with Fredit, it comes with a 14-page manual And it also comes with a 100-page library, as I've called it, which is a lot of sample find and replaces to do all sorts of things, many of which use wildcards. Now, you don't actually need to learn to program wildcards yourself, because other people have done all sorts of clever things with them, so that you can go to the library, find something from the library, and just copy and paste it into your Fredit list, your list of find and replaces, and just use what somebody else has done. And Fredit also comes with 13 videos telling you how to use it. So it is a very, very powerful program, but you can use it very simply, very straightforwardly, as we did, just changing spellings and hyphenations and that sort of thing. So the main idea with macros is that you start simple, you find macros that will help you to do the jobs you want to do, get used to using those, then try a few more, or try a few more of the features of Fredit, let's say, and the more you use, the more you speed yourself up and make the job more interesting and more enjoyable. So I hope I've given you an idea of the sorts of things that you can do with macros, and that they're not really too complicated, but you do have to learn that, there is a learning process. If you want these gains of speed, then you do have to spend a bit of time learning these things. But there are my book is there with all sorts of macros, over 600 macros, plus instructions as to how to use them. But I've also got a whole pile of videos on YouTube that you can look at. That's the screencast channel, if you want to go and see what's there. But there's a list of macros on my website, so that you can look through. Suppose you want to find out the videos about Fredit, for example, then you can go to that list and have a look. Oh, it's the same thing again, isn't it? So here you've got a couple of videos, my first macro. So how do you get started, how to run them. The macro starter pack is a set of 18 macros that you can just load up quite quickly and easily, giving you Fredit and various other macros that are good to use for starting off. All these Fredit videos. If you want to learn wildcarding, I've done some videos about that. Line editing, as you're reading through the text, you can speed yourself up by using macros. Some analysis macros here, macros for moving around the text quickly and easily, stuff on spell checking, blah blah blah. There's loads anyway. So hopefully I've got you in a mood to say, well, actually doesn't sound as if it's too complicated. It might be worth giving it a go. I think I'll get started and see what I can do. And if you come unstuck, drop me a line, drop me an email, and I'll see what I can do. Okay, thanks for watching.